I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting 72 of the Standing Public Accounts Committee. Pursuant to Section 108(3) and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, the 20th of April, 2022, the committee is resuming consideration of the follow-up study on Report 3, Access to Safe Drinking Water in First Nations Communities, Indigenous Services Canada, of the 2021 Reports 1 to 5 of the Auditor General of Canada. For your information, we held a first meeting on this study on the 14th of June 2022 with witnesses from the Auditor General's Office and the Indigenous Services. We re-invited the Auditor General for today, June 19th, and they respectfully declined the invitation because they have not done the supplementary audit work since the report was tabled, and they are not able to expand on or provide more details about what the Deputy Minister would have said or progress that has been made on the department's actions. We re-invited Indigenous Services, and they were not available today for Thursday, nor for the Thursday, June 22nd. They're never available. We also invited the Minister of Indigenous and Crown Relations. First, they declined the invitation. However, when we told them that the audit dated back to 2017 and that it involved their department, they reconsidered that invitation, but they were not available today, nor are they available for Thursday, June 22nd. Therefore, given this, I would like to acknowledge Mr. Desjarlais. You have the floor, and then Mr. McCauley.
It's you and the chair, actually, and for our final committee, it means a lot to, I think, have representation of women, particularly yourself in this committee, because I know how important your judgment is to our good work here. And so, Madam Chair, I'd like to table, which is I provided this to the clerk's office this morning, a motion that I'd like to table now in relation to the study that we're undergoing right now, that in relation to the follow-up study on Report 3, Access to Safe Drinking Water in First Nations Communities, Indigenous Services Canada, of the 2021 Reports 1 to 5 of the Auditor General of Canada, the committee calls on the Minister of Indigenous Services and the Minister of Crown Indigenous Services Relations to appear at the Public Accounts Committee in light of the seriousness and urgency of this issue raised by this study. Madam Chair, it means a lot, I think, to this committee in particular that we voted unanimously to ensure that this work was done in the past. It's extremely disappointing to me that the ministers have declined to not appear in this committee on something so serious. We're talking about clean water, Madam Chair, something that is a fundamental right to life in this country. And what we're witnessing is ministers choosing to actively ignore the reality and the work of Parliament to ensure that we actually have a comprehensive study that tries to get to the bottom of this. We've heard from countless number of Auditor Generals, 3 Auditor Generals who've said that this is simply unacceptable, and they've each called for accountability. And we've asked the Deputy Minister now twice on this issue to come to present to this committee to clarify who's accountable. We've been unable to actually ascertain who is responsible for this. We can't continue to see First Nations and Indigenous communities go without, and I think it's imperative and actually an emergency that we take this crisis seriously. There will be a day today where children will be unable to get clean water as we speak. And the fact that this has been going on decades and decades is simply unacceptable, and I think it's something that's shared amongst my colleagues, and I implore all my colleagues to see the importance and relevance of ensuring that the ministers understand this issue, are present to the committee, and are also accountable to Canadians, in particular to Indigenous people who continue to have no clean water for their children. They're feeling helpless. And at this point in time, I had to reserve my thoughts from the previous meeting about how devastated I am about this fact, that we continue to not see this. And my understanding is that the government's approach to this is things are better than what we think, and that's something we simply can't demonstrate is true if we don't actually have the ministers here to account. And so I implore that this committee take this motion seriously, and I'd apologize to the clerk and to you, Madam Chair, for not providing that in translation. Thank you.
Mesdames les greffières, est-ce qu'on...
Has the motion been handed out? You will be doing that in 1 minute. Thank you.
Monsieur McCauley, vous...
Mr. McCauley, you have the floor.
May I go ahead, or do you wish to hand it out first? Great. Madam Chair, thanks very much. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Desjarlais, for bringing this up. I think it is very important. I know we've heard constantly from the government side that this is not the account to hold departments accountable, and I disagree greatly with that comment. I want to follow up a bit, and I spoke about this previously about when we discussed the follow-up reports. There's one I'd like to wrap in, and if we cannot wrap it in at this time, I think this amendment is too important to amend. But if we do need the minister here on that issue, and I will be talking about the other issue, which is the 2018 report, which is Social Economic Gaps on First Nation Reserves, Indigenous Services Canada. This was part of Auditor General Ferguson's incomprehensible failure report. People think it was about Phoenix, but it was also about gaps in First Nations services. I'm going to read a couple items from that report. Indigenous Services Canada overstated First Nations secondary school graduation or completion rates by up to 29 percentage points. That's percentage points, that's not percent. It was 91%. I spoke to Mr. Ferguson in the committee, and he stated that for at least a decade, Indigenous Services, of course, the Northern Affairs before, was purposely doctoring graduation rates for Indigenous. 91%. The report also states, we found the education results for First Nation students have not improved relative to those Canadians. We found that despite commitments the department made 18 years ago, now this was 2018, so this goes back to year 2000 he's referring to, so it's been 23 years now, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're now in our 8th parliament since this report came out. I do not want to be sitting here in another parliament. I don't want other MPs sitting here looking back at our failure to act on this. And just like I don't want another group looking at our failure to act upon the clean drinking water issue. I'm going to continue what he states in the report. Indigenous Services did not collect relevant data or adequately use data to improve education programs. It did not assess the relevant data collected for accuracy. Department still unable to report on federal funding on reserve education compared to funding levels for education systems across Canada. The department did not access relevant data it did collect. It did not know what extent First Nations students were graduating from high school with diplomas recognized by post-secondary institutions or with completion to certificates. Apparently what Indigenous Services is doing is if you're Indigenous and you drop out on the very last day of grade 11, they're not counting as a dropout. Only if you drop out in grade 12. Like, again, this is 23 years. And I've looked up, we've had one progress report in 5 years. We have 30 pages of recommendations of items mentioned, and we've had one progress report that addressed 3 of these items. I think it's desperately important if we are going to be doing our job as MPs or as humans, or even working toward reconciliation. We need to have the minister in the department, the deputy ministers in, to actually update us and explain that this is fixed once and for all, that the water issue is fixed once and for all. So I wholeheartedly 100% support Mr. Desilets' motion. I hope the rest of the committee will, so that we don't have MPs 1 parliament from now, 2 parliaments from now thinking, what the hell did they do on public accounts that they didn't actually hold the government responsible? What did they do to actually improve people's lives? When we have the stuff right in front of us of what has to be done. It's not good enough just to do a report, look at it, and then wait for some department to maybe do one update over 5 years. So 23 years now. It's not acceptable. I think we owe it to Canadians, to Indigenous, that we actually get answers. And not from a partisan point. And I will pledge right now, when the minister's here, I will not make it at all a partisan issue. Because it's both parties. We just want answers on what is done to fix this and what needs to be done to fix this. And again, we'll be supporting Mr. Desilets' motion, and I sincerely thank you for bringing it forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madame Shanahan, vous avez la parole.
You have the floor, Ms. Shanahan. Thank you very much. Madam Chair. Since 2015, I also have been aware of the scope of this issue. And I believe there are a couple of things that can be added to this. Madam Chair, I'd like to know from the clerk about the agreement to hear from the minister in the fall, or Minister Haidu. That's what Mr. Williamson told us at our last meeting. So even if it is not what we usually do, that is to say to have a minister before us, it is something that has been done before. We have had Ms. Haidu here, Minister Haidu, in the past before the committee. And even if public accounts usually invites the deputy ministers before the committee, because we're talking about implementation, application, we're talking about program policies, etc. on the ground. The scope of this issue means that Minister Haidu already came to see us, came before the committee, and I would add this. In the notices or advisories regarding safe drinking water, I believe there has been progress. But what's important is we need to understand why progress has been made and what is missing at this point in time. What are the problems that still remain to be resolved? For example, lack of resources. What is preventing us from getting to the 100% elimination of these boil water advisories? I understand full well my colleagues' frustrations. And I know that there's a will to have ministers before us. And I thought actually that this process was happening. So perhaps we need to put on the record that the committee needs to do this and will do this. I think that it will set a precedent for coming years. That is to say, when there is an issue of this scope and this systematic, then I think it will be very important in the years to come to have this precedent. That is to say, to ensure that no one says, well, it's not our problem, it's up to our officials, and it's not up to the minister to become involved. I believe that the request has already been made. And according to what Mr. Williamson said last week, this is just an issue of scheduling. So, Madam Chair, I would like to hear what the clerk has to say about the current invitations. Go ahead to the clerk. Yes, in fact, the ministers were invited for Monday, the 19th of June. Today, they were not available. The invitation was made for Thursday. They were not available once again. And so the chair asked me to re-invite them for the fall. Mr. Desjardins.
In light of what's been transpiring the last little while, I think it's inconvenience is often what's cited, but I think what's often inconvenient is for these communities to continue to wait. You know, I think if this was a matter of urgency, which it is a matter of urgency, there isn't one settler community in Canada that is on a boil water advisory. Not one. And if the government members can't make themselves present, the ministers, for something as important as getting water to children, Madam Chair, I'm not certain as to what excuse could seriously trump the fact that people aren't going to get water today. Not one settler community in Canada lacks clean water. And so I'm just very nervous and cautious to the fact that this has been going on for decades and decades and decades, and there's been often excuses made for the absence of ministers to be held accountable on these things. And there has to come a time where we exercise our force as a committee member, but also as representatives of Canadians, to actually ensure that the ministers actually come. And if it means passing another motion to request that they come to demonstrate the urgency of this, and hopefully that we're united in our call for accountability, then I think we would do this. And as a matter of fact, given that I think we've heard from all sides now, I would like to move to a vote on this if we can. Should I call the question?
Monsieur Fragiscados, vous avez la parole.
Mr. Fragiskatis, you have the floor. Thank you.
I just want to ask our colleague, so I understand why the Minister for Indigenous Services is mentioned in the motion, but I'm just not perplexed, it's probably not the right word, but I'm looking for an explanation as to why the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations is mentioned. To what extent are there land claims issues that add a layer of complexity with respect to water services somehow? Logistically, and it is mostly a question around logistics, why the two ministers instead of the one, when we've heard at this committee and others in very clear terms that the focus of water is the business of the Minister for Indigenous Services Canada?
J'ai une réponse pour vous, monsieur.
I have an answer for you, Mr. Fragiskatis. And it actually was in the notes. The audit took place in 2017. And in 2017, at the time, there was only one department responsible, and that one department became two departments eventually. And that is why Indigenous Crown Relations had been invited. We reminded them of their responsibility, and they said they would come back, or that we would reinvite them.
I appreciate the explanation, and I'm aware of that, of the nuances of that. However, it's also my understanding that when that change happened, all the work that was being carried out on water did shift to Indigenous Services and the minister responsible for Indigenous Services. So I'm still at a loss to understand why we would have both ministers appear when it's clear, and it has been for a number of years now, the case that issues of water on reserves are the business of the Minister of Indigenous Services. So I'm looking for more of an explanation.
Nous avons monsieur
Mr. Genuis, and then Mr. Desjardins, and then Ms. Shanahan.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just very, very briefly, I think it's just important to remind the committee that we don't have to be constrained by the existing time slots. I acknowledge the importance of this issue, and although the House is not scheduled to sit next week, if the minister is available next week, we don't have to wait till the fall. I think this is an important issue, and scheduling one extra meeting end of this week, early next week, whenever the minister is available, I don't think there'll be the same resource crunches that we normally have. So let's get this done.
Yeah, I do appreciate the comments and questions from the member from the Liberals. But there's 2 points. One, to the point of the chair, which is the fact that during the time of the audit, this was an audit that was directly related to INAC, Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada, which was subsequently divided into two ministries. One of them was subsequently divided into another ministry, Northern Affairs, but I digress and I'll leave that aside to demonstrate the point that the source of largely the protocol issues that are present within the culture of the ministries is sourced from Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada. And even the point the member makes about believing that all of the responsibilities transferred to one ministry over the other is something that is not proven. It's something that is absent from our report. It's something that we don't have clarity for, actually. So we don't know. That's probably why it's important to ask the minister what level of responsibility she's inherited since that audit. And so I think that's part of the relevance as to why the minister should be present here, is because of their amount of scope in terms of the transition itself. The ministers aren't solely responsible for the administration of the ministry. They've been asked through mandate letters to help the transition of the division of this massive ministry. We don't have, for example, the clarity from the Auditor General or even from the ministers themselves as to what level of responsibility or where the gray area persists. And just to give clarity to an example of where gray areas exist between these two ministries, for example, Métis and Inuit groups, which do not fall under the auspices often of Indigenous Services Canada, but are communities that are currently without clean water, how are their claims of no clean water heard? Because their mandate is within the Ministry of Crown Indigenous Relations. So you're telling me that we're just supposed to isolate all the First Nations to Indigenous Services Canada, isolate all of the Métis and the Inuit to Crown Indigenous Relations, and then only ask questions about clean water for one when this issue is impacting all three of them? I want to be clear. The community of a large community, Iqaluit, had no clean water in the last 24 months. They, of course, have had support from the federal government and municipal governments and the territorial government to assist in the reconstruction of their pump stations and their salination stations. But that was something that could have been stopped. We could have had a relevancy to that if we had, for example, jurisdictional clarity or even department clarity as to who was responsible, whether it was Mark Miller or whether it was Patty Hajdu. We still don't know. And the territory of the Northwest, including the Inuit, still have no idea. Is it maybe Northern Affairs, as a matter of fact? And so the question of whether or not these ministries have properly administered their mandate to ensure that these ministries are properly divided, and it's clear to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who their crown partner is for the relation of something as simple as clean water, maybe this issue wouldn't persist. And so it is extremely relevant that we have the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, the minister who's responsible for taking up the concerns, particularly not just land claims. That seems to be a claim from Mr. Fragoskatos that they only deal with land claims. That's not the totality of it. This is the same ministry that's administering housing, clean water. They're administering other aspects that are contained within this audit, even to the point Mr. Macaulay made, which was the incredibly important point of the doctoring of information. We don't know how that issue persists, whether when it was inherited, that issue, by Indigenous Northern Affairs, did it persist in both or all three ministries? These are questions of relevance to why the ministers need to be present, and ones that the deputy ministers themselves could not admit, because it's not their mandate to divide the ministries, it's their mandate to run their departments. It's the mandate of the ministers to ensure that there's clarity. And so we do need to actually have maybe even all three ministers. Now that you bring it up, maybe we should have Northern Affairs Minister too, to give clarity as to why there's no clean water in communities like Iqaluit when they need it most. And so I'll limit it, of course, to these two because we're dealing with First Nations in particular and some overlap of some of those other communities in the south of 60. But I do hope that you could see there's a real relevance to the fact that if it was Mr. Fragoskatos or Mrs. Bradford, if you both had the mandate to divide a massive ministry, it would make sense that you communicate with each other and to Canadians as to how you're going to delineate that responsibility. And so, Madam Speaker, with that, I'd still like to move to a vote.
Donc, juste signaler.
I would just like to point out to all the committee members, Mr. Bedard is here, and normally we would move on with the agenda. So, Ms. Shanahan, you raised your hand. I just wanted to know if you needed to speak or if we can go to a vote or adjourn the debate. You will have to let me know what you want to do. We can vote. Thank you, Clerk.
Mr. Genius?
In favor.
Mr. Cram? In favor. Mr. Macaulay?
In favor.
Mr. Desjardins?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Fragoskatos?
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan?
Yes.
Mr. Drouin?
Oui.
Favor. Eight. Is we? Yes, in favor. Oui, c'est en faveur. Pardon? Oui, en faveur.
Donc la motion de
And so Mr. Desjardins' motion is adopted. Thank you very much to the committee members. Now we will have to suspend the meeting in order to go in camera. Thank you.
Thank you.